Dealing with rejection as a gay man is such a difficult journey to undertake, and a lot of us throughout our lives, especially starting in childhood, have had to deal with it in one way, shape, form, or another. And in many respects, it is very tricky also in not letting it impact your self esteem and not letting it be something that defines who you are. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that today. First, let's talk about some of the ways that rejection affects us, particularly as gay men. One area is vulnerability. I know I've talked a lot about vulnerability in the past, and connection and authenticity has a lot to do with vulnerability. However, when you are rejected, when, say, for example, you are wanting to meet somebody on a dating site and you make that first step to connect with them, you send a message to them or you pop on their instant chat and they ghost you or they feign interest and then they disappear or are they block you. And things like that just cause you to feel like, wow, I really don't want to go and revisit that again. Or you're with a partner who, uh, for whatever reason, is closing you off and does not let you in certain areas of his life. And you really struggle with that feeling. You don't feel like you're part of their life, and it's very difficult, and it causes you to close off yourself. Or you're at a social gathering with other gay guys, or you're at a event or a meet and greet or something like that, and you want to strike up a conversation. You go into a group that you see, they seem kind of like fun. They're talking together, they're having cocktails or coffee or whatever, and you go in there and it's quiet. And then they just kind of either walk away or they change the subject or they just ignore you. And that feeling of making those steps, of making those initial contacts, when they are kind of put off, it creates this feeling of like, wow, I need to protect myself. And a lot of that has to do with this feeling of vulnerability that's tied to past experiences. And another core area that's affected in ourselves as gay men is our sense of identity and self-worth. So, unfortunately, what happens sometimes, and I know for me particularly, this happens quite a bit, is there is the tendency to internalize it and say, what's wrong with me? Why am I like that? There must be something wrong with me. There has to be a reason why they are rejecting me, why they are excluding me, why they are walking away from the conversation, why they won't let me in. There has to be something wrong with me. And so it's either impacting our ability to be vulnerable based on past experience, or is an area where we actually identify with it in a way that makes it about us and our own value and our worth as human beings and as gay men. Reframing is one of the most powerful strategies that you can use and that you can have at your disposal when you're dealing with the rejection. It is something that I've taught myself and that I have been able, even in the darkest moments, been able to turn things around. When I first came out, I didn't know anybody and I came out late in life. I came out very late in life, and that was after spending years and years and years trying to change myself and in religious situations and institutions, and coming to the conclusion that it was never going to work for me. So I had to essentially start over and recreate a community and friendships that supported me when all the previous ones did not support me. And that was a process in itself. And it wasn't an overnight thing, but it was something that actually I had to embrace. And one of the biggest shocks that I had when I decided to come out was I thought that everyone would welcome me. I thought that everyone would accept me with open arms. We're all gay. We're all together. We know what it's like. Come join us, all of that kind of thing. When I went to a bar for the first time, I thought for sure guys would want to meet me and be attracted to me and that they would want to talk to me and be my friend and all these kinds of things. And It was just not the case at all. And what a shock that was. And the other shock was when I was online and I was trying to meet and date guys, the barriers and the blocks that I had there as well, like the ghosting, the conversations, or when they found out that it was newly out and they didn't want to touch me because like, well, you don't know what you want. I remember this one guy that I met. I went on a date with him, and I was living in the suburbs and he was in the city. And we chatted for a while, and he was super handsome, and he was just like, he seemed like he was my type, and I met him, and we had a nice long coffee, and we walked for a really long time, and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, oh, I'm really connecting well with this guy. And then he brought me back to his place, and I don't know, I think he made the move on me, and it was interesting because it got awkward. He stopped it and he said, friends don't do this. I'm like, well, I mean, I just met you, so that's interesting. Um, and he just closed off and the connection stopped. And he said, what you need to do is you need to go out there and just live a little. You need to go to the bar scene, and you need to go meet all these people. And I'm like, okay, I will do that. And nice to meet you. And I hope we can hang out again. And I actually did that the following weekend. I went down into the gay area of the city, and I spent the whole night there. And that's when I learned that, guys just aren't as welcoming as I thought they were. And I remember calling him because I had his number, and I said, hey, I'm doing this. Thanks for teaching me this, blah, blah, blah. And then he never responded. He ghosted me. And, that was like really hard. I'm learning a couple of things at once. I'm learning about how online dating was, and I'm learning how connecting and trying to meet people in the gay scene, like at gay bars in particular, was. And so that was very hard. And I think probably as I got into the dating scene and put my profile out there, and I started to just meet people, I had to create a story for myself that supported me. And I had to talk about myself and my experience without having to rely on years and years and years of being out already, which I wasn't. And I had to just learn how to deal with that. I had to just present myself and learn. And I actually turned it into something. Here's where the reframe comes. I had to turn it into a learning experience that was exciting to me, and I had to say, well done, you learned this thing about people, or you made your way through this situation, or you met these guys and you had this response. And I treated it as an experiment. And quite a while before that, I'd actually been in a sales career where I learned that every no meant that it would eventually lead to a yes, and however much money that final sale was, all those no's were worth something. And that's kind of what I used. I just used that kind of like thinking to consider that all these rejections were going to lead to something, they were building a story in me. They were making me into somebody. And that is something that's really helped me. And going forward, I mean, I've had setbacks in careers where I felt like I was not being promoted, and I felt like I was being overlooked. And I just learned a way to just harness it to teach myself how to learn. And I made it into something that where growth and development were something important to me. And I'm saying this because to go into something that's unfamiliar to you and you're dealing with rejection for the first time, you need a tool where you can reframe it and make it empowering for yourself. Because if you don't, and if you make it about yourself, it will tank you. It will when you make it about yourself, there's nothing you can do. It's like the thing that's inside you that causes these things to happen that are external, that really they're not in your control. But the thing that is in your control is how you regard yourself. And so the ability to take that and use it for yourself is going to help you further along. And yes, it's difficult. It still stings for me. But if you can take that and just ride with it, you will be able to go and progress. I'm not going to say that you're going to be married tomorrow. I'm not going to say that you're going to find your lifelong partner tomorrow, but you'll feel better about yourself because you've learned how to reframe the situation for yourself, and you've learned to not let rejection tank you. Now, let's provide some other examples of reframing. all of these scenarios and examples, I have actually experienced some variation of them. One is where you get you how am I going to say this? You build up the guts, I guess, to ask somebody out, and they may be somebody that's close to you, that you know, like a friend. You know, you've been hanging around them and you like them, and you know, you just want to ask them out, and you know, you want to kind of further that a little bit, and you just want to do that, and they just say, you know, I only see you as a friend, or I don't really see that. I'm not interested, or I'm just out of a relationship, or you know, I decided I'm not going to date somebody for the next 5 years. I literally had somebody that I asked out that I knew, very like acquaintance like, but I knew him from the gym and stuff like that. And I remember I really thought he was attractive, and I'm like the in-person guy. I don't like online stuff, so I'll ask him. I'll ask somebody out more in person versus like online in an online scenario or app or something like that. And I remember asking him out. I think it was outside at Starbucks or something like that. And I say, hey, you know, would you like to go grab brunch sometime or whatever? And he was like, sure. Yeah. I'm like, oh, wow, that's really great. And I'm like, well, we'll connect. Give me your number. And we did this whole thing. And it wasn't even a day. I don't even think it was like 4 hours. I get a text from him, and it's this long text of like how he committed to himself that he wasn't going to date anybody. He's going to make it all about him, and he's just going to go through his learning experience and all this kind of, it was so long. I know that when somebody sends something really long like that, they're just trying to build up some kind of excuse. And I remember like, dude, what is wrong with you? Like, all I did was ask you out to brunch. But I had to take that kind of scenario and just objectify it. And that's again where I had to reframe what the situation was. And it really wasn't about me at all. It had nothing to do. This person just didn't like, I don't know what was going on in his head. If he just felt unworthy or if he was telling the truth, I really don't know. But I just had to just be objective about it. And another thing that you can do, another tool in reframing, is to actually list out what happened and you know how it felt, and then kind of what the objective response might be. That's another way to deal with it. So just a couple of tips and tools for thought. So as you go forward in learning the technique of reframing, what's going to happen is you will start to build resilience in yourself. You will start to pick up things faster, and you'll pick yourself up faster and get back on that horse to keep riding on. And that in itself is another strategy, because if you stay down and if you don't get back on the horse, if you don't get on the bike again, you'll never be able to do it as much as you would like to do it, because you'll be stuck in that fear. And that is a reason why you want to continue forward. And you know what happens when you get back up and when you reframe the situation, you apply that effort, you teach yourself something about yourself. You start to believe in yourself differently. You know, when other people are unreliable, you become reliable to yourself. And that is so foundational to good self-esteem, that when you can count on yourself, no matter what, when you know without a shadow of a doubt that you're going to get up there and you're going to go move ahead, you believe in yourself, even if you don't really feel it, and even if you get up and then you fall back down again, you still keep getting up. You're just going to keep moving ahead, and that ability to build resilience is something that's going to serve you, and it's actually going to build your ability to rebound from rejection. So yes, rejection is tough, and in a lot of ways, it can really suck. But I hope that I have encouraged you to take steps to actually harness it for yourself and to not personalize it. And I will also leave with this, that if this is something due to serious traumatic events in your life, or there's just some issues that seem to just continually drag you down, really seek professional help. Seek to speak to somebody who maybe is a counselor or a therapist or a mental health professional or something like that, where you actually have that external support that can actually carry you through and teach you some more strategies that can help you and actually can listen to you and provide that support that you need that you may not be having currently in your network or your friends or your family.